All right, and shalom, shalom. So I want to welcome everybody to Oklahoma City King James Bible University. And I'm Deacon Micah, and today in our lesson, it's going to be called Seek Ye Out of the Book of the Lord and Read. So overall, the objective of this lesson is just to correct those that are new to the truth and just to show them the importance of avoiding diverse doctrines when you're studying the Lord's Word, and also for us that have been around for some time that are more experienced with precepts, just for those, it'll just be a reminder about these private interpretations, that you are to abstain from these and you stick to the Lord's book when you're looking for preceptual understanding, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the Creator. So without further ado, then I'm going to end up taking this down, and we'll go ahead and get into the preceptor and get started. So what's going on is on the left side of this preceptor is the lesson, and on the right side, this yellow box, and this is just a treasure chest. This is additional precepts for me to lean on and to go to if I need to further clarify and explain myself from the left side, which is the lesson. So first precept that we'll look at is Isaiah chapter 31, verse 1 and 3. And it reads, "So woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, and stay on horses and trust in chariots, because there are many, and in horsemen, because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord." So in this verse right here, Spirit of Christ, and he's getting in all of our butts. Then every last one of us, then people that are part of the university that are just studying, the elders and the deacons, and he's getting in every last one of our butts about what we've done. Then we've, at one point, and we were all looking at other understandings, just different interpretations, and not seeking to the Creator. This many that we're looking at in Isaiah chapter 31, verse 1, this is talking about other doctrines. And we'll see this right here when we go to the right in the treasure chest and look at Ecclesiastes 12 and 12. And further, by these, my son, be admonished, so be corrected. Of making many books, there is no end. There's all of these different floods of doctrine, all of these different interpretations. And much study is a weariness of the flesh. So this is what we're talking about. Because when we go back to Isaiah chapter 31, verse 1, these horses, this is nothing more than just a private interpretation. So own doctrine, own interpretation. And you have to look at that function of the horse. That if you were to consider a wild horse that hasn't been through any obedience training, it's going to neigh at you, and it's going to kick if you get too close to you, or you may end up taking flight. So it'd be a long time, lots of training that you'll have to put that horse through before you can even put a saddle on it and get on it. Then these chariots, and these are other whirlwinds. And these horsemen, these are subtle spirits. So we're looking at these many different sources of knowledge and not looking to the Creator. And he's told us many times that his thoughts, they are not our thoughts. Then his ways, then they are much, much higher than ours. Then he's a spirit, we're flesh, he's eternal, and we're temporal. And we have to get to where he's at. So we have to lean to his understanding, and we have to forsake what we know and stick to the one book and not looking at these many. So that's what's going on here. Now we have verse 3. Now the Egyptians are men. So these people that's in this confusion, that's writing these books, they're men and not God. It's a full thought. Then that's the separation. That's the difference right there. They're men, flesh, and not God. And they're horses, so there's private interpretations, flesh, and not spirit. When the Spirit of God shall stretch out his hand, both he that helpeth shall fall. So the creators of all of these different doctrines, they're going to fall. And he that is hoping shall fall down, and they shall all fail together. So the people that are putting out these floods of doctrines, they're going to fall. And the people that are leaning to this, instead of returning and seeking out the Creator, they're going to fall too. Paul, he told us in his books that the law then it was our schoolmaster. And, you look at the similitudes of what's being talked about in the law to understand what's going on spiritually. So what we're going to look at is a similitude is a marriage. So when you get married, then you're entering into this promise with one other person. So two is becoming one flesh. And you keep that marriage sacred, undefiled. At any time, whoever it is, male or the female, they step out of their marriage to go and lay with somebody else. By that law, they're going to be judged an adulterer. And we already know what the judgment is. That's death. So it's the same way when you look at this with marriages, defiling a marriage, laying with somebody else, being judged an adulterer, and having to take that death at the very end. When you flip this back spiritually, because we're married to the Spirit of God, then when you go and forsake him and lay with other doctrines, you're going to be looked at as this whoremonger as well. Then this is what we have to look at. So we have Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4. So marriage is honorable in all, in the bed undefiled. But whoremongers and adulterers God will judge, because that's not his ways. Then his way is marriage, and it's honorable. And this is in his law, which we can look at this right below Hebrews 13 and 4. So, and he shall take a wife in her virginity. Then that's the law. Then it's been sitting in there all of this time. Then not to have harlots or to have multiple wives, which we're talking about these other spirits, these other books. Then we are to have one wife, which he gave us this way back in Genesis when we go and pull it and look at it. So we have Genesis chapter 2, verse 21 and 22 and 24. And the Spirit of God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, so mankind, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs, so one of his spirits, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And that's a full thought. So we'd have no excuse to be studying these other books, going to these horsemen, going to these other chariots, and looking at these horsemen. He closed all of that up. And we already seen this in Isaiah 31 and 3. Now the Egyptians are men and not God, and their horses flesh and not spirit. He closed all of that up in Genesis chapter 2, verse 21. Gave us a spirit. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, so this is verse 22, made he a woman. And that's W-O-M-A-N, so that's singular, not plural. So we have one that he gave us, and brought her unto the man. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. So it's a one-on-one deal. Then it's not all of these many different books, all of these different interpretations. So we're going to go down and look at Sirach, because Sirach, then he builds upon this understanding more about us only being with this one wife and not being whoremongers, just stepping outside of this marriage. So we're going to look at Sirach chapter 15 and verse 2. And as a mother shall she meet him. So comparing as a mother. So she's going to nourish you with her discipline. She's going to bring you up with her doctrines and teachings and her knowledge. And receive him as a wife, married of a virgin. So there's that wife again. And this is how the Spirit is going to come to us. As a wife married of a virgin. That virgin undefiled. So the Spirit that was given to us to be our helpmeet, she's undefiled. Then she's without spot, without blemish. Nothing forward or perverse in her mouth. The Bible, then it talks about these two spirits. Then we have Spirit of God, which is this virtuous woman that we're married to, that's coming to us as a virgin. And then we have the other spirit, which is the spirit of the ancient and honorable, which that spirit is not going to come to you as a virgin. So this spirit is going to come as a harlot. It's going to have its own bread, its own apparel. It's going to be full of whoredoms and full of lies. But the spirit that the Most High, he's commanding us to stick to seek to for our understanding, is going to come as a virgin. So we're going to cross over back into the treasure chest and look at this, because Solomon, then he spills the beans on this with Wisdom of Solomon 7 and 22 and 23 in Proverbs chapter 8, verse 7 and 8. So we're going to look at this. So, for my mouth shall speak truth. And then that's a full thought. So her mouth, then a doctrine, then it's the truth. No lies there. And wickedness is an abomination to my lips. So all, which it's not some or most, then that's all of the words of my mouth are in righteousness. Full thought. So we have no excuse to be wanting to turn and look at other doctrine, looking at other women, when this one right here that we were given is perfect. So on the other side of this full thought, there's more. So there is nothing froward or perverse in them. So nothing about the doctrine that's in this book of the Lord is corruptible. Then it's not flesh, and it's not perverse. It's not wicked. And we'll have some more. So Wisdom of Solomon 7 and 22 and 23. For wisdom, which is the worker of all things, taught me. For in her is an understanding spirit, holy, and one only. So it's not many, manifold. So it is one spirit, and it has many different operations, but it's one spirit. Subtle, lively, clear, undefiled. So then it's without spot, without blemish, plain, not subject to hurt, loving the thing that is good, which cannot be letted, ready to do good, so kind to man, and steadfast, which she's not going to change. So it's the same yesterday, the same today, the same tomorrow. And this is where Ozan, then he was messing up with that clip that I showed, where, oh no, then you gonna teach God how to talk, then no, then he can say this and it can mean this right here, and then just trying to flip people up. Now, the Most High, then he doesn't change. So what he says in the back, then it's going to mean the same thing in the front. And he's just leaning to other doctrines, and that's the danger of it. When you go outside of the book and look at concordances, then it'll give you a false understanding of words, and then you'll end up teaching and saying things that you shouldn't say. Because the spirit that God gave us, it's steadfast, it doesn't change. So sure, free from care, having all power, and overseeing all things, and going through all understanding, pure and most subtle spirits. So this is how the Spirit of God is going to come to us, and she's going to meet us as a wife married of a virgin, and she's pure. There's nothing wrong with her. Now, we're going to look at what our forefathers have written to us, so that we can see about this other spirit, and the spirit of the ancient and honorable that's over Babylon. So we'll look at this. So we'll start with Nymph, and we'll look at chapter 3, verse 1 through 4. So I'm going to take the 7 off and put that 4 there. So woe to the bloody city. So this is talking about us, that it's living this sinful lifestyle, then this lifestyle of flesh and blood. So woe to the bloody city. So it is all full of lies and robbery. It's a full thought. And that's what it's full of, then these lies and robbery. So the prey departeth not. So the noise of a whip, and the noise of the rattling of the wheels, and the prancing horses, and the jumping chariots, all of this craziness, all of this confusion, so that rattling of wheels, these different spirits, horses, private interpretations, and the jumping chariots, all of these whirlwinds. So the horsemen lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear, and there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses, which a whole lot was just said here in verse 3. which we have to now backtrack and look at this some more. So I have a question that I want us to think on. And this horseman, the question is if they have a bright sword and a glittering spear, so this is light, why on the other side of this colon there's so many slain and so many carcasses? I mean, after all, the sword, it's bright and it's glittering. So just want us to think on that for a second. So they have these instruments of light, but however, there is a multitude of slain. That's a full thought. So he's telling us the horseman lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear. So it's bright, these instruments. But however, there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses. And the reason why is even though it's coming off as light, it's not actually light. So we can also look at this as, instead of it being gold, then it's fool's gold, then it's pyrite, then it's not wisdom that these horsemen have. But if you're not wise enough to see the deceits that are in their doctrine, they'll catch you, and you'll be like the multitude of these slain. As you got to remember, in Nineveh, then it's a bloody city. It is all full of lies and robbery. So I'm going to show you something to help you see this bright sword and glittering spear so you can understand what's going on. So in the treasure chest, and we'll go down and we will go to Isaiah 14 and 14 and 1 Corinthians 11 and 13 through 15. So remember this. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. So I will be like the Most High. So these ministers that are teaching these other doctrines, these other interpretations, and not teaching you out of the 1611, they're emulating the Most High. They're coming off as these messengers of light, but it's not actually light. So, for such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. So this is why then you abstain from looking at these other doctrines, because it will catch you up. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. So that's why those instruments that they have, their doctrines, their words, then it appears to be bright and glittering, but it's deceit. Then it's just all smoke and mirrors. Because Satan, then he wants to be like the Most High, but he's not the Most High. The Most High is the one that has the bright doctrine. So we'll see this right here in Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7, verse 26. So for she, which this is now talking about the Spirit of Christ, this is not talking about the Spirit of the ancient and honorable. So for she is the brightness of the everlasting light. So the unspotted miracle of the power of God in the image of his goodness. And then we have the law talking about this too. So Deuteronomy 32 and 41. If I whet my glittering sword, so it's telling you, in my hand take hold on judgment, so doctrines and teachings, this is a full thought. So it's telling us right here. So the Lord is the one that has the glittering sword. These horsemen that are in confusion, they're trying to emulate the Spirit of Christ, but they're still false apostles and deceitful workers. So if you seek to them and you seek to their understanding, you're going to be no different than these multitude of slain, because you were taught the precepts and the doctrines and teachings of men and not of God. And many of us, then we're doing this, and the purpose of these lessons that we've been pushing out lately with the King James Bible University is to get us to not walk that path, not to be caught up with these enchantments, but to see the truth. So, and there is a multitude of slain and a great number of carcasses, and there is no end of their corpses. So they stumble upon their corpses because of the multitude of the whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, because those horsemen, once again, they're deceitful workers. So the mistress of witchcrafts that selleth nations through her whoredoms, and families through her witchcrafts. So this is that other spirit. Then she's a harlot. And if you take hold to her whoredoms, then you will end up being sold into confusion, and that's not where you want to be. So we'll look at this some more with Revelation 17 and 5 and 6 and Mark 7 and 7. And upon her forehead, so her thoughts, was a way written, so mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman, so the spirit, drunken with the life of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So just sitting there wondering, how did she get so many? And it's with the whoredoms. So howbeit in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Which we have to just remember what we had seen at the very beginning of this lesson. There are horses of flesh and not spirit. And when the Lord shall stretch out his hand, both he that helpeth shall fall, and he that is hoping shall fall down, and they shall all fail together. So this is that importance of abstaining from these other doctrines, these false doctrines, and only going in a way of understanding, because you don't want to get caught up. So, and we're back on the left side, and we'll pick up with Wisdom of Solomon, Sirach 15 and 3. So with the bread of understanding shall she feed him, and give him the water of wisdom to drink. And he shall be stayed upon her, and shall not be moved. So you're not going to get raptured or swept away. And you're going to be standing on that solid rock. And shall rely upon her, and shall not be confounded. So we'll see this when we come back over here to the right side, and we head over to 1 Corinthians 14 and 33 and Matthew 7 and 23 and 24. So for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. So therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine, so you're drinking and learning of this knowledge, this wisdom and understanding, you're drinking this water, learning and eating this bread, and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man, which built his house upon a rock. Which, if you want to see who that rock is, you just look at 1 Corinthians chapter 10. And the rain descended, so these other knowledges, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house. So that's talking about you. And it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. So this is what Sirach 15 and 4 is telling us. So he shall be stayed upon her, and shall not be moved. So that rain, those floods, and those winds are not going to move you out of the way. So verse 5. So she shall exalt him above his neighbors, and in the midst of the congregation shall she open his mouth. So it's going to give you understanding so you can speak and edify the congregation. So he shall find joy in a crown of gladness, so a crown of salvation, and she shall cause him to inherit an everlasting way. So let's go to Baruch chapter 4, verse 1 right here. So this is the book of the commandments of God, and the law that endureth forever. So there's that everlasting way right there. So all they that keep it shall come to life. Full thought. So you're staying in the marriage. So not being a whoremonger. But such as leave it shall die. So you have to stay within the marriage. That's that everlasting way. That law that endureth forever. So next, then we'll look at Proverbs chapter 5, verse 15 through 18. So drink water, so you learn knowledge out of thy own cistern, so you're not looking at others. And running waters out of thy own well, So let thy fountains, so same thing as knowledge, be dispersed abroad in rivers of waters in the streets. Which all of this, what this is talking about is what we seen in Sirach 15:5. So she's going to exalt you and open your mouth in the midst of the congregation. So then after you've gleaned and you've taken in this knowledge, you'll become that wiseman. I mean, not that wiseman, that watchman. And you go and you correct your neighbor that you see that's naked, that's poor, hungry. Then you let that fountain right here, let thy fountains be dispersed abroad in rivers of waters in the streets. So then you share this with your neighbors. Then when you have that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, then let them be only thine own and not strangers with thee. So those strong concordances, your Jubilees, your Book of Enochs, and your Yashers, your Sephers, your Blue Letter Bibles, and anything else that's not gathered together inside of that King James 1611, you don't end up mating that with the 1611. So you let them, which is the spirit that was given to us, only be thine own and not strangers with thee. So let thy fountain be blessed. So give wisdom and rejoice with the wife of thy youth, which we had seen that up here in Genesis chapter 2. Verse 21, 22, and 24. So we're rejoicing with that wife. And you can only have one. So we'll see this with 2 Idris chapter 14, verse 47. So for in them, which is just talking about the book of the Lord, is the spring of understanding, the fountain of wisdom, and the stream of knowledge. So you rejoice with the wife of your youth. So back to Proverbs 15:19. So let her be as the loving hind in pleasant roe, full thought, and let her breasts, so that knowledge, spiritual talk, satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love. And why wilt thou, my son, my servant, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? So this is Solomon, and he's, building on his whole teaching, his thinking pattern as well. Then he's the whole purpose. And you stick to that wife of your youth, and you avoid the strange woman out here with these diverse doctrines. So he gets in this some more. Solomon in chapter 9 for Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 9, verse 11 through 14. And let me just a sec. I gotta remove this comment, so I don't know who this is, so we'll delete that. And let's go ahead and get back to the lesson. All right, so Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 9, verse 11 through 14. So, for she knoweth and understandeth all things, and she shall lead me soberly in my doings, and preserve me in her power, so in her knowledge. So shall my works be acceptable, and then shall I judge, so teach thy people righteously. So there's this right here, that Proverbs 5:16 up here that we had just left. Let thy fountains be dispersed abroad in rivers of waters in the streets. So this spirit, this wisdom, is going to make your works acceptable. And afterwards, then shall I judge thy people righteously and be worthy to sit in my Father's seat. You'll be ready to get back in the kingdom because we got put out. So, for what man is he that can know the counsel of God? So there it is again, what we had seen Isaiah 31:3. These Egyptians, they're men and not God, and they're horses of flesh and not spirit. So for what man is he that can know the counsel of God? So this is what you keep in mind when you look at these other diverse books. Or who can think what the will of the Lord is? For the thoughts of mortal men are miserable, and our devices are but uncertain. So let's see this. So we have Isaiah, so we're on the right side, chapter 55 and verse 9. So, for as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So, you're only going to understand what the Creator is saying if you're gleaning from his book and you're putting in the work and breaking down these parables to understand what he's saying. Otherwise, and you look at these other books and you're seeking to another man to teach you about God, and then that's your problem at that point, because now you're leaving the book. So all these things spoke Jesus, so salvation unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable spoke he not unto them. So what that's telling you is you got to put in the work, and if you don't work, you don't eat. But if you put in the work, you'll get what you need to know. So for even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat. So, yes, then it's full of parables and it's full of dark speeches. You have to put in the work. You got to work for it. It's the reward at the very end for taking in this knowledge and walking and living in what he's commanding us to do is eternal life. So this work that we have to do to put these lessons together, and also the studies that we do, each and every one of us in our private time, then it's necessary. It's no big deal to put in all of this work to understand what the Creator is saying. So just don't try and cut the corners and take the easy way out. Because then if you do, then you'll have that damnation at the very end, because that'll run you right back to what we had looked at with Mark 7:7. So how in vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. So you stay out of those other books. So what we'll do is now we will bring this back into our remembrance, this Isaiah 30:1 and Hebrews 13:4. So woe to the rebellious children, saith the Spirit of God. So he's getting ready to get in our butts again. That take counsel, but not of me. And that's a full thought. And that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin unto sin. So just all forgetfulness. Once again, so marriage is honorable and all in the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. So once again, we're tied to that one spirit. Then all of these other interpretations, these other doctrines, then you are being a whoremonger. Then you can only have one wife. Then you try and marry other ones, they're concubines, and you're going to be that whoremonger, that adulterer. So we'll see this, and this is in the law. So we have Deuteronomy Chapter 17 in verse 17 through 20. So got to pull out the contract and look at what's written in here. So neither shall he multiply wives, so with the S on there, so this is plural, to himself, that his heart turn not away. Because these other books, once again, what man can know the counsel of God? Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. And it shall be when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, so you pitch yourself there in this situation, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of that which is before the priests, the Levites, and it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life. So you're studying out of this book, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God. So this is how you're going to be fed and how you're going to grow in that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. To keep all the words of the law, of this law, and these statutes, to do them, that his heart be not lifted up above his brethren, and that he turn not aside from the commandment to the right hand or to the left, to the end that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, so he and his children in the midst of Israel. So you stick to this one book, so you won't turn to the right hand or to the left, and that you will learn to desire the Creator. So That's in our law. And we'll look at this some more. So Sirach 19:2. So wine, so the strong drink, and women, so the M-E-N, so W-M-E-N, make men of understanding to fall away. And he that cleaveth to harlots will become impudent. So you're going to not grow in understanding. So let me, because we have a lot of, use me, come over, gotta delete this one too. All right. So Sirach 19:2. So wine and women will make men of understanding to fall away, and he that cleaveth to harlots will become impudent. So this is that precept that goes with Isaiah 4:1, which the camps, and they look at this carnal all of the time, and they look at this physically. Then we can have all of these different women, and that's not what that's saying. So in that day, so 7 women, so these spirits, shall take hold of one man, saying, so we will eat, so learn our own bread, and wear our own apparel, so our own covering. Only let us be called by thy way, to take away our reproach. So then if you let this happen, these other spirits, they're going to come into you, and they're bringing their own bread, their own apparel, so their own doctrine. And just as what we were commanded not to do in Deuteronomy 17:17, these multiple wives, they're going to turn your heart out of the way. So this is not good if for these 7 women, these 7 spirits to take hold of you. But there are so many camp folks out there that look at this carnally, and unfortunately they're waiting for this day to happen, that they can just have multiple wives. So we'll go down and look at this some more. So we have Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. So now therefore hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them, that ye may live and go in and possess the land which the Lord thy God of your fathers giveth you, because then that's the only way that you'll end up being able to inherit the kingdom. Then if you're listening unto the statutes and judgments which he taught us, not being defiled with these other women. You shall not add unto the word which I command you. So this is more law. Neither shall you diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. So before we unwind, we'll go back up to the Sirach 19:2. So wine and women will make men of understanding to fall away. Then you can't be fallen away than if you plan on entering into the kingdom. And he that cleaveth to harlots will become impudent. So we'll go back into the treasure chest, and we will pull Isaiah 34:16 and look at it. So seek ye out the book of the Lord and read. So that's your only source that you're learning from. No one of these shall fail, and none shall want her mate. For my mouth it has commanded, and his spirit it has gathered them. And thy testimonies also are my delight and my counselors. So you take this Psalms 119:24, and you go right back to what we were being corrected about in Isaiah 30:1. So woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, because his testimonies are supposed to be our counselors, not going outside. And as far as this Deuteronomy 17 and 17-20, then another thing just hit me. You have camp folks and other people that try and contest what's written in this book about Deuteronomy 17:17, where it says, neither shall he take multiple wives. Say, oh, no, then this is talking about a king, and this don't apply to me. Well, right here, where my mouse is at, we have Revelations 1:6, and that's made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. So this is talking about us right here. So neither shall he multiply these spirits to himself, that his heart turn not away. Neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. So you're sticking to this one source of understanding. So with that being said, I wasn't going to be before y'all long, and we're only 41 minutes in, and I'm looking at the comments section now. Just wanted to see, was there any questions? Is everybody clear on what we just saw? So I'm looking at the comments section now. All right, so looking and everything looks good. So wasn't going to be before y'all long. I'm going ahead and get up out of here. This was Oklahoma City King James Bible University. And until next time, peace.